Hi, everybody, and welcome to class this week. I'm just recording from my hotel room here in Brisbane, Australia on a layover. And I was lucky to have got close to 2 days here. So I go back to Vancouver tomorrow. And it's early summer here, so I can't really see, but it's a beautiful sunny day. It was raining like crazy yesterday, almost like this tropical jungle rain, and it was just like coming down like crazy. And then today it's beautiful, hot and sunny, around 30 degrees, so just absolutely amazing. And yeah, so I just wanted to record a quick class for this week, and it actually is sort of a continuation of the last class on Diamond Cutter. I put a whole bunch of notes together, and because the topic's so deep and profound, didn't get a chance to finish it. So I'd like to sort of have a little bit of discussion. I don't know if I'll go the full hour. We'll see. I might with this one concept on emptiness and karma, and emptiness and dependent origination. So we'll see, but otherwise it ended up being a little bit of a short class just with this one concept, and then I'll do the next class as a recording this week as well, just talking about the four kayas, the four bodies of Buddha, and how that relates to Diamond Cutter Sutra. Okay, starting with the Heart Sutra. I'm just gonna put my reading glasses on here, one moment. Okay. Homage to the perfection of wisdom, the Blessed Mother. Thus I have heard at one time the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajgriha on Mass Vulture's Mountain together with the great assembly of monks and the great assembly of bodhisattvas. That time the Blessed One was absorbed in concentration of countless aspects of phenomena called profound illumination. That time also Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of the great being, was looking perfectly the prize of profound perfection of wisdom, looking perfectly also at the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Then through the power of Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of the great being, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva of the great being, replied to Venerable Shariputra as follows. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of the lineage wishes to engage in the practice of profound perfection of wisdom should look perfectly like this. Subsequent, looking perfectly and correctly also at the five aggregates being empty of inherent existence. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form. Form is not other emptiness. Yeah, form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form, and the form also not other than emptiness. Likewise, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, having no characteristics. They are not produced and do not cease. They have no defilement, no separation from defilement. They have no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, and no consciousness. Excuse me. There is no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mentality, no form, no sound, no smell, no taste, no tactile object, no phenomenon. There is no I element, and so forth, up to no mentality element, also to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth, up to no aging and death, or no exhaustion of aging and death. Likewise, there's no suffering, origin, cessation, or path, no exalted awareness, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because there's no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstructions and no fear. Passing on beyond perversity, they attain the final nirvana. Also, all the Buddhas reside perfectly in the three times, having relied upon the perfection of wisdom, became manifest, complete Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, unsurpassed mantra, equal to the unequal mantra, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all sufferings, since it's not false, should be known as the truth. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed, Tayata, Karagata, Paragata, Samgati, Buddha Soha. Shariputra, bodhisattva, great being, should train the profound perfection of wisdom like this. Then the Blessed One arose from that concentration and said to Superior Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, that he'd spoken well. Good, O son of lineage, just like that. Since it's like that, just as you have revealed in that way, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra, Spirit of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva, the great being, the entire circle of disciples, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, demigods, and spirits, were delighted, and I praise what had been spoken by the Blessed One. Just we can recite just a few mantras here of Vajraparamita mantra or the Ganden mantra. Actually, you know what? I am going to use my chug drum for that one here and sing it while I drum. I always have to watch in hotels that people don't they don't make too much of a racket. And anyway, and get reported to the to the front desk. Anyway, let's just try doing a little bit of drum here. Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhisoha. 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 Okay, so let's just take a moment to our meditation now. Let's visualize ourselves being seated in a wide open space, like a beautiful open plain, almost like an infinite space, because of course we have all sentient beings in it. So grounds like lapis lazuli, blue, soft to the touch, comfortable, soft to sit on. And we're surrounded by all sentient beings, with the people closest to our lives, our family and friends, and moving outwards to people we don't know, or sort of have more of an indirect relationship to. So feminine part of our body on the left, represented by our mother, the masculine side of the body, our right, represented by our father on our right. So mother and left, father and right, people we love the most behind us as support, and people we like the least or have karmic debts or issues with, working things out, kind of like healing journey with them. They're in front of us as object of our prayers and meditation. And after that, moving outwards in concentric circles, people from all over the world, different cultures and backgrounds, all sort of natural environment ecosystem of the animal realm, from insects, even trees, little beings, sentient beings, all the way up to sort of complicated big mammals and so forth. We're all here. The spirit world in the same way, being just as varied and as complex, complicated, and interrelated as the animal realm. So we just think of all the different spirit worlds here with us, like spirit world in general, capital S, capital W, but also all the different realms, spirit realms, like the astral realm, ethereal realm, elemental realms, and so forth. They're all here. Gods and demigods, celestial beings, divisions and levels, hierarchies there. And then countless beings in lower states of rebirth, hell beings and hungry ghost beings, just making sort of the vast majority of being stuck in these kind of, because of their bad karma, these sort of nightmare realms. But here we're all together as a big family, all happy to meditate, and we can feel that the beings in lower states of rebirth are getting the healing and dharma that they need. So beautiful dome of blue sky above us. Clear blue sky, and in it, just keeping it very simple for a diamond cutter course. Again, we're just going to visualize Buddha Shakyamuni in the sky. You can have him on a line thrown multicolored lotus, sun and moon if you like, or even just straight if it's easier, just have him kind of like floating in the sky. Beautiful golden energy body made out of light. Yeah, 3 robes of a monk, lotus position with his legs. begging both medicinal nectar in his left hand and right hand with the subduing movement, palm open, touching the earth. And then we can just feel at his heart is also his higher angelic form, Sambhogakaya form, of the divine couple, Conqueror Vajradhara and his partner Vajradhatu Ishvari, yin and yang together as one. And again, they're sort of small at his heart, representing kind of his soul or his center. And they're have beautiful sapphire blue bodies wearing crowns and silks and in sexual embrace, sort of kissing or making out. He's holding a bell in his left hand and Vajra scepter, Dorje, in his right. She's got a skull cup and medicinal nectar in her left and curved regal chopper cleaver knife in her right. And even if we'd like to go a little deeper, we can just visualize between them at the heart level is a beautiful hum letter, either Sanskrit or Tibetan stylized character, or in English, the letters HUM. Blue energy and softly radiating the 5 elemental lights of white, yellow, red, green, and blue. Okay, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta, refuge in the 3 jewels. And just like standing under the roof or under your umbrella when it's raining, the ultimate refuge for all of our suffering is in the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And for our intention here, so that's kind of like our view, why we're doing this. We are doing our practice here as a therapeutic practice, most of all, spiritual therapeutic practice as a way of finding happiness, true lasting happiness, spiritual happiness, and cutting out our worldly suffering. And we're doing this on a pragmatic level, practical and pragmatic level. So the solution for that, the medicine we're taking, is the 3 jewels. But the intention of why we're doing it more than other is bodhicitta, the awakening mind. We're going to do this that we become enlightened, that we lead all sentient beings to enlightenment as well. So with and on behalf for us and all other beings, we are taking refuge and looking towards reaching full awakening from samsara. I know sentient beings until we achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I know sentient beings to achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. I know sentient beings and to achieve enlightenment, go for refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. Through the virtues we collect by giving other perfections, may we become a Buddha for the benefit of all. And the 4 measurables here of measurable love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. May everyone be happy. May everyone be free from misery. May no one ever be separated from their happiness, having the happiness of nirvana, pure joy. And may all beings have equanimity, free from hatred and attachment. So a warm, open, caring attitude towards all beings. We can feel white lights and nectars coming from the heart of Vajradhara and Vajradhatu Ishvari coming down, purifying us, and all sentient beings around us. Kind of like we can just even think just like a soft white light coming down, dispelling all shadows. Just having like turning the light on if it's dark, just sort of making the whole world just clear and sort of warm and good with this white light. Making all that's crystal clear, all of our negativity, shadows, and delusions, obscurations, and obstructions being sort of blown away here. The light chased away and all crystal clear. And now the light's a soft golden light, like sunlight coming down from their hearts. And sort of powering us up with all spiritual qualities of Sutra and Tantra, particular wisdom realizing emptiness, bodhicitta, so love and compassion, leading all beings to enlightenment, and power, the power to act on this, the power to manifest this, the power to be creative, to voice or project all of this out for all beings. And again, we can think that also the four immeasurables, us and all sentient beings, are getting that love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. Okay, so seven limb practice here, making our practice Buddhist. We actually first one doing prostration, honoring and respecting. The three jewels here from our heart, showing sort of the offering of this love and respect. Offering a second one here, just from our hearts, beautiful things we're just sending out to the merit field again, just like flowers, candles, and so forth. It's a way of opening our hearts. Declaration and rejoicing, third and fourth, again, just acknowledging, standing up, sort of owning all of our negativities and failures, working on them, healing them, letting them go, sort of erasing and coding a different patterns of behavior here, more positive and wholesome ones, and rejoicing in all of our good qualities, those of others, and especially all holy beings. I think that we want to sort of increase these positive qualities and values in our life, seeing others as examples of that and wanting to embody them, those things in our own life. Asking all holy beings, three jewels, to always stay with us and always to teach these two things. So we just feel like just sending up from our hearts here, a lion throne dissolving the Buddha, as well as a golden eight-spoke wheel representing the Noble Eightfold Path. Sort of the true path, if there's true origins, true sufferings, true origins and cessations of these sufferings, how we do that is through the true path, eightfold path. All Buddha's teachings. We must please continue to teach us this and guide us along this path in this life and future lives. And finally, dedication. All of our merit, we've got a good motivation here, so good dedication. Every good thing that we do, be ripening towards or manifesting towards the awakening, enlightenment, and happiness and joy of all beings. Now, holding in our heart, purified universe for the mandala here. So let's here put the mandala on. Just again from our hearts, offering up a beautiful, purified, sort of visionary universe with all good things, all beautiful things. You can just visualize the Vedic universe, classical Vedic universe, and its imagery, or just from your mind, just feel all the beautiful things in the world, in this world, in other words, the whole universe. We're offering up to the three jewels. The ground sprinkled with perfume and spread with flowers. Great mountain, four lands, sun and moon, seen as a Buddha land, and offer thus the all beings enjoy such pure lands. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious gurus. Om Edam Guru Radha Mandala Kamyati Yami. Okay, so in our heart now, just like last week, when we do a little visualization, just at our heart, just where sort of our root mind or soul, or I mean, if you want to use that concept, if that's a little easier for you, but just sort of where our main sort of root mind, who are sort of who we are, I guess you could say on the most subtle level, is at our heart here, our heart, our mind, our soul sensibility, so to speak. And that mind and the energy or chi that goes with it, like two sides of a coin, we're going to sort of metaphorically image them at our heart in the form of a beautiful diamond, carved diamond in a Buddha's form. So, little diamond Buddha at your heart, If that's hard to visualize, again, you could just visualize a diamond if you want, a little diamond almost like on your wedding ring or your earring or something you see them at the store downtown. A beautiful diamond, blue diamond if you want, or just sort of a clear diamond. Clear diamond's probably a little more auspicious. So we can visualize that. This beautiful diamond Buddha at our heart representing our Buddha nature or the emptiness of our mind. So there is that's what they call teachings from Maitreya Sangha in Uttara Tantra, Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, being Tathagata or our Buddha nature, natural Buddha nature, and developing Buddha nature, sort of representing ultimate and conventional truth, or emptiness, independent arising going together. So there's the emptiness of our mind, that our mind has no nature on an ultimate level, that it's blank. Its mind is just labeled mind. And on a conventional level, that mind is clear and cognizing, that it has no definition. As Aristotle would say, mind is nothing before it thinks. He has the example also that it's like hot wax, clear wax that takes the stamp or imprint of anything you put on it. So mind is just the placeless place that just allows things to show themselves to us, to step into the light, which is what the word phenomena means in Greek. The original is that which steps into the light. And the light is our knowing, gnosis. So our mind, this sort of space-like mind, it's like space, like emptiness. They go both together very, very well. And that this mind will know emptiness and reach awakening, see its true nature, and already it is engaged. Its very nature is empty. So it is one with emptiness already on this ultimate level. So metaphorically, again, we're showing this, sort of manifesting this as a little, almost like a little poem to ourselves and all sentient beings, having this take the form of a diamond, a little diamond Buddha at our heart. So golden lighting is coming from Buddha Shakyamuni. And reflecting, we can just feel these little diamonds at the center of all sentient beings' hearts as well. So just like the sort of story of the net of Indra in Hinduism, where King of the Gods throws all these diamonds on the floor and they all reflect one another like a big interconnected web of being, so to speak. We're doing this here. All sentient beings, all reflecting our diamond minds, and the emptiness of our minds, all reflecting one another. We can visualize just Buddha Shakyamuni gets very, very small. We can visualize him dissolving into the divine couple of his heart, Vajradhatushvari and Vajradhara. And just like a little blue diamond themselves, they come to the ground of our head and slowly descend to our heart and become one with the diamond Buddha at our heart. Again, activating it. That the Buddha's Dharmakaya mind, omniscient mind, meditating on emptiness. The fourth body, the Buddha's the Svabhavakaya Buddha body or entity nature, entity or nature body of a Buddha. In other words, the emptiness of their omniscient mind. That becomes one with the emptiness of our mind and our Buddha nature. So Buddha and ourselves are one. And why are we one? Because we've always already been one. We're just in a state of unknowing, fallen asleep, and we've forgotten this. So just like Gnostic Christianity or even Platonic or Neoplatonic works, they always say that all knowledge is recollection or remembering, that we are in error because we have forgotten. We suffer, we have forgotten our divine nature, forgotten the truth of ourselves. And this is symbolized, this truth, by the diamond in our heart here. Okay, so slowly coming out of emptiness here. Meditation emptiness, or meditation of our Diamond Buddha at our heart. We can get into class here. Okay, so last class, I was just going to do a discussion on the meaning, so the deeper meaning of dependent origination that you get in the Diamond Sutra. And we ran out of time. It's a real big one. And, I'll be coming back to this, I think, more than once. There's another class sort of a few down the road where we'll be talking about this again. And this is in other classes I'll be teaching. I think I've talked about this before. So it's, yeah, it's just like a mantra going on and again. And again, we have to get this. This is the whole key to samsara. This is what we have to learn sort of to graduate the School of Enlightenment and get your Buddha degree here. So dependent origination, to start, in the teachings, they always sort of give you three ways of understanding dependent origination or understanding karma, almost in an ontological way. So what's interesting is ontology is something, ontology, you could say, is traditionally in Western philosophy sort of the study of metaphysics or the science of being, qua being. In other words, what is the true nature of things? And of course, when you get to other cultures like Chinese or Indian cultures, they ask different questions. They're not asking the Greek question of what's really real. If everything's changing and everything's impermanent, what's real in that process? Right? Quite the opposite. I can't remember when I did a class on Chinese philosophy for my degree years ago. It was fascinating. But for them, there's always a big connection, I think, between sort of nature and principle or something. I can't remember how they put it in Chinese. Of course, the English translation is not going to be the same. But kind of like how to understand energies or flows. So it's not about what's real because everything's changing, nothing's real. It's about understanding how to become one with those flows of reality or flows of impermanence. Whereas the Indian question that's asked, famous German philosopher Martin Heidegger always said, if you want to understand someone's philosophy, always try and understand the question that they're asking and that their work is the answer to what they're trying to answer in their books. The question, and for him, of course, what the question is, the Greek question in Western philosophy is, what is being? So with each philosopher, what's the answer they give to that question? But culturally, you go to any other culture, cultures ask different, because they have different values, they have different questions. So in the Indian culture, when you look at Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, Charvaka materialism, Samkhya yoga systems, it's always how do you find the path to happiness? How do we get out of the path of suffering and go on to the path of happiness? And this is a question of, this has to be solved by looking at the nature of reality itself. So anyway, where I'm going with this is that, okay, so when I say when we in Buddhism, it's a different question. When I talk about ontology, really the whole thing with Buddhism is that it doesn't have an ontology. It's sort of an Indian system. So everything's changing. We're not asking about the nature of things because the whole point is the nature of things is that they're natureless or they're empty of having a nature, right? So when we talk about, so we can divide up what that natureless nature is when we're looking at impermanence. If we're trying to understand conventional reality as being a reality of change or flows, how do we understand that level? So Buddhist is the best way to understand emptiness on the conventional level is by understanding dependent origination. It's the same thing the founder of our tradition, Tsongkhapa, he said, like, there's different ways of arguing or giving illustrations of emptiness, like what is the relationship between one and many, for instance, between I guess you could say, nature and impermanence or whatever. There's also the whole diamond cutter argumentation, but like shards or fragments of a diamond, that the whole and the parts are connected. But Tsongkhapa is following Buddha in sort of classical Indian Buddhist philosophy that the best way to understand karma, best way to understand emptiness is through dependent origination. Things are made manifest or created because of factors outside of themselves. In other words, they depend on other things to be, right? So Thich Nhat Hanh, amazing Buddhist master, great enlightened being of this century, says that things interbe. Of course, if you've got a flower, for a flower to be manifest, you still need soil, you still need nutrients, you still need water and sunlight for the flower, for the seed to take root and produce a flower, let's say, right? So the flower interbees. Okay, so there's different layers of understanding this. So the most obvious way to understand dependent origination interbeing is through causality, that things change due to a process of causality. In other words, if you have causes, then you have effects. If you have effects, then you have causes. Things are produced by things that are not themselves, okay, and that they're interrelated that way. So that's sort of a very coarse way of understanding dependent origination, is a very obvious one, that things change according to causes. If we know what the causes are, we know the effects. If we know what the effects are, we can trace them back to being produced from certain causes. Next level, we go down a little deeper, that we can see even cause and effect on a more subtle level as being a relationship, being in a relationship. In other words, a nature of relationships. In other words, wholes and parts, or sets and members of sets, for instance, on a logical level. Like I was just saying, this is where you get this too in terms of relationships. You can talk about how a flower is caused by its seed and all the factors around it. You can also talk about wholes and parts. In other words, the whole of the flower, I guess you could say, is dependent upon all the different parts that make it up. Again, like the soil, the nutrients, the sunlight, the water, the petals of the flower are part of the plant itself, same with the stem. So all of these things only make sense in terms of being part of the whole. In other words, the elements, it's like sort of a structuralist thing. This is what, just so sure, the famous Swiss linguist said, his sort of big, I guess, sort of discovery about languages. He said words only make sense, meanings of words, in terms of being a part of a language. In other words, you don't have individual words meaning things separate from a language. You don't have a language in general separate from the individual meanings of words. So they all go together as a whole. So the parts of the whole only make sense in terms of the whole only makes sense in terms of the parts. So we can talk about that, everything is related. Right? We always like to say this, everything's related, everything interbees. Now, at the most subtle level, we can even take it right down to the next level, which is the most subtle level, which is we can talk about things existing in terms of these relationship wholes and parts, what they call nominally, or by name alone. In other words, by names, by words, and by concepts. And those things only make sense in terms of a whole. Concepts only make sense in terms of being imputed on a set of particulars. Names only make sense in being part of a language, mental imputation. So that's the most subtle level of reality, is dependent origination in terms of how I think and talk about things, with the conceptual, I guess, kind of conceptual map I have by the language I speak and the concepts that I use. And below that is no thing, or nothing, or emptiness, right? You can't get past that level. So I can't get outside of these things to talk about things outside of them, so to speak. Like, all I get is just more words and more concepts. And on the other side of that is no thing. So a friend of mine always says, see you on the other side of the alphabet. But this is, when you think about it, there isn't any other side to the alphabet, right? It's not like I can jump out of conceptuality and language and look back and understand those things. When I go to emptiness, it's the lack of an inherent existence of those things. So that's why we call it a non-affirming negative. It's an absence. I don't jump out of these things and see a whole new world of all individual things and this and that outside of language, outside of conceptuality. That's even more amazing than those things. It's that those things sort of cease and I see an absence, but that this absence itself is luminous or emancipatory and therapeutic, hence its positive content. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So anyway, dependent origination on my notes means you label something. Geshe Michael's famous example, the pen, he always uses the pen here, or the chew toy for the dog. Okay, so unless you label something, then it doesn't exist as that thing for you. This is the ultimate meaning of dependent origination, according to the highest school of emptiness, which is the middle way consequentialist school, or Madhyamika Prasankika. Okay. So basically, emptiness means that things have to be labeled or conceived of a certain way, thought of and talked about a certain way, otherwise they don't exist. Okay. So emptiness is basically the fact that you are not your parts, you're not something other than your parts, and you're not the whole collection of the parts and nothing together. Okay. So it's not like emptiness is something separate from the act of mental imputation. It's mental imputation, or our mind labeling things, that creates things the way they are. And so it's emptiness means that things are empty of anything not being that process. Okay. So the example he gives is that you've never seen an elephant before, and then you see it. So the elephant, what we call the concept of elephant, isn't its parts individually. It isn't something other than its parts. And we can't locate elephant, so to speak, separate from all those things, from its trunk, its head, its skin, its four legs, and then its tail, let's say. And then it isn't the sum of its part, independent projection label, elephant labeled onto the sum of those parts. So this is a big thing where you get in phenomenology, where Edmund Husserl says that this is the idea of one and many is a conceptual imputation. It's not a heap of parts that end up producing the one out of the many different aspects. So in other words, he would give an example like when this pen unfolds itself in a series of perspectives or a series of qualities. Okay, this one's a fancy one where it's cork, so it's brown, it's sort of soft to the touch. I've got the pen, there's the ink, all these things. Out of all these very different perspectives or qualities, there is a quote unquote penness, or one thing amongst a whole plurality of things. Okay, so I see it as one thing. When I hold this pen up and look at it, I know this is the same as this, even though they look different. Like if you see this perspective here, the pen straight on, it looks very different than this perspective, but I know it's the same thing. I know even the touch of it and the color belong to the same thing. So it's not that I add all these things up and then magically they produce the one out of the many. It's the mind that imputes that out of the series, okay? So it's in and through the series that you get this, that the mind produces or unifies them or constitutes or synthesizes them into a series, and then I'll get, you know, sort of like a sign I can talk about it a certain way, okay? So that's important. So it's, in other words, elephantness isn't separate from all those qualities of the elephant, nor is it a part of anyone in particular. So I was going to say, anyway, I was going to say cut off the elephant's trunk. That's terrible. We're going to think, but whatever. Like, let's say, I don't want to do neat violence in my mind, a beautiful elephant. So let's just say this will still be a pen if I change the color. If I even take the ink out, I can still talk about it. Where's the pen? Well, I can see it on the thing. Oh, it doesn't work, but there it is. I can even break it into pieces and throw it on the counter. And if someone says, where's my pen? I can point and they'll look and know it's their pen, even though I've broken it. So you can see that penness isn't a part of the pen, but it's not separate from it either. And it's not like it's the pieces and the label that go together, like collecting them in a pile. The idea of synthesis is something a little bit different than that. You can see they're dependent on one another, and yet they're not the same thing. So hence, this is the idea that they quote unquote don't have a nature, right? That they're interdependent or interbe as a process, hence that they're empty. Okay, so in other words, when I'm looking for something, all I ever find is the label projected onto those parts. This is how you establish or find emptiness. And what's interesting, why is that important? Well, in our day-to-day life, you never have this idea. You always think that things exist independently of this process, right? And that's why I can get absolutely hung up on thinking something's so important that I want it so bad that I'm attached to it. Oh, let's say I want this chud drum. It's so beautiful. I need to have it. It's separate from me. I feel a lack. Only this will fulfill me. I have to spend money and buy another chud drum. Or, in other words, it's completely separate from me, even separate from my label chud drum. This is just a drum. If I show this, people won't know what this means as a chud drum. And again, if you show it to another animal, it doesn't know. Like the dog, of course, my mom's dog might start chewing it because it's wood or something like that. And a beaver would maybe eat it and add it to its lodge in the river or whatever, right? So you can see that the mental labeling is different for all these things. It ends up creating a different reality for them. But what's interesting is there's nothing separate from you, separate from that process of labeling in a certain way. Okay, so where does this label come from? I just wanted to say, use an example here from my favorite philosopher, Ludwig Wittgenstein. Is he did in the, I don't have this, I'm in a hotel room in Brisbane, I'm not back in Nelson with my copy of his masterwork, Philosophical Investigations, but in one of the appendices, he talks about, there's an essay he wrote on what he calls seeing aspects. In other words, how do I know something exists as something, or how do I see something as something? I see this as a rosary, right? How does it appear or tell itself to me that it is this thing? And of course, this is the way we perceive things as their aspect or as something, logically as something. I see this as a watch. I see this as black. I see this whatever. Yeah, I can see this as a rosary, not just a collection of wooden balls, but as something. And he says what's interesting is we don't even think about it until we get to ambiguous figures. So I have a little quote here. This is a quote from the famous book. And he says, I shall call the following figure the duck rabbit. It can be seen as a rabbit's head or as a duck. I must distinguish between the continuous seeing of an aspect and the dawning of an aspect. The picture might have been shown me, and I've never seen anything but a rabbit in it. So of course, this is the famous psychology picture. You can see here on my phone, this picture that he has is of course either a rabbit or a duck. Which one? Depends on the aspect, how you see it. And what's interesting is some people, let's say you just see it as a duck and you can't see that it's a rabbit. So you show this to someone and they just see it as a duck, as the label duck. Do you see the duck? Yeah, I see the duck. Do you see the rabbit? Different label, and you can't see it. Like you're like, no, I don't see the rabbit. I don't know what you're talking about. It looks like a duck. But if I tilt the picture a little bit, you see the little rabbit's mouth here. All of a sudden, oh, those are his two ears. Now I see the rabbit. Okay, so it's what's called dawning of an aspect, or it reveals itself as a certain thing, right? Heidegger would say that things reveal themselves as an aspect, but also conceal as well. In other words, when I see something as something, I don't see it as something else. The possibilities of seeing it different are concealed or darkened, or I don't see it. So in other words, when I'm seeing it as a rabbit, I don't see it as the duck, or I don't see it as a dog. I don't see it as a car, or whatever, right? But it could appear in different ways. I can label things any other way, but here it's appearing. So this one of these, which one is it? It's one ambiguous figure, but also he says it's useful to introduce the idea of picture object. For instance, this would be a picture face. I see this as a happy face, like, in all cultures around the world, like we can just draw a picture of a happy face, even simply without the round. If I just do two little dots and a little crescent shape, you will see it as a face, a happy face, someone smiling at me, right? Okay, so in some respects, I stand towards it as I do towards a human face. I can study its expression, can react to it as the expression of a human face. A child can talk to picture men or picture animals and can treat it as it treats dolls. I may then have seen a duck rabbit simply as a picture rabbit from the first. That is to say, if asked, what's that? Or what do you see here? I should have replied, a picture rabbit. If I had further been asked what that was, I should have explained by pointing to all sorts of pictures of rabbits. Should perhaps have pointed to real rabbits, talked about their habits, or given an imitation of them. Now imagine a duck rabbit hidden in a tangle of lines. Now I suddenly notice it in the picture and notice it simply as the head of a rabbit. At some later time, I look at the same picture and notice the same figure, but I see it as a duck, without necessarily realizing that it was the same figure both times. If I later see the aspect change, can I say that the duck and rabbit aspects are now seen quite differently from when I recognize them separately in the tangle of lines? No. So anyway, that's pretty, it's a great, Wittgenstein's amazing. I'm just going to sort of make a plug for studying Wittgenstein. But anyway, so what's interesting is the point he's getting at is the point of emptiness, which is why Robert Thurman says that he called Ludwig Wittgenstein the great manifestation of Manjushri, but of wisdom in the West in the 20th century, right? That anyway, because Wittgenstein will show that these aspects are a matter of conventions, right? Our day-to-day language use in our culture and our history, the way things appear to us in terms of how we're solving certain kinds of problems or doing things or living things together. So in other words, things exist by convention or name alone. That's a big part of his philosophy, and that's therapeutic, that when I'm trying to find something more than that, I get confused and start doing metaphysics and philosophy and systems and all these things, and start to get away from what's really real, which is the fact that the only thing that's real is that we just label things in terms of words and concepts. So anyway, so where's that going? Is that, in other words, the aspect of the duck rabbit isn't in the picture, okay? So it's not like it's one or the other. Okay, it's neither. It's both and neither at the same time. But what Wittgenstein's saying also as well is that technically, even though it's in your mind that you're seeing the aspect, it's not something even structural in your mind, that when you look for it, even in your mind, you can't find it, right? So in other words, it's not, I can't say that when that aspect changes, it's supposed to be one way or another, even in my mind. Right? It's not inherently existent as some kind of structural filter in my mind or in my perception. It's just a matter of convention. It's just a matter of how I'm labeling it or seeing it at that moment, depending on what I'm doing. And it could be otherwise. So why is that important? Well, of course, if something is not inherently existent out there and not inherently existent in here, where is it? It's nowhere. It's empty. And yet virtually it appears in my experience, in my mind, as performing a certain function, right? That's the unity of karma and emptiness, or of emptiness and dependent origination, or emptiness and conceptuality, or emptiness and labeling. Now, where does this label come from? Okay, like we're using this example in the sense that we have a choice to see the duck rabbit like either as a duck or as a rabbit. But as we know, we don't have a choice with how things appear to us. This appears to me that my watch, I'm always using my watch example, but as this appears to me as black, for instance. This appears to me as a watch. When I see it, I will see it as a watch. I won't see it like Michael, if I'm a dog as a chew toy, I grab it, I won't see it like a one-year-old kid won't understand what this is when they pick it up, a little baby, for instance, right? It's people that have never seen an iPhone or even know how to turn it on. Like when I try and turn it on, like you can see, it's where people don't even know how to use an iPhone. It's not appearing to them in a certain way, right? It doesn't exist a certain way for them. So in other words, appearances or aspects or labels are forced on you by your past karma. So what karma means is that how things appear to you right now are the product of your actions and conceptualization and labeling in the past. So we can talk about labeling even in this life in terms of the language you've been brought up, the history you live, the background that you have, but also from a Buddhist point of view, you have all past lives as well, right? So all of this has as a result the product or the manifestation of your experience, the way things are for you right now, okay? So the mental seeds or mental habits, the backchecks, right? The imprints are forcing you to have a filter of seeing things or selecting out appearances or aspects to see things a certain way. So in other words, your karma is to see the picture as a duck, or karma is to see it as a rabbit, right? It could be, it's neither. But the point is that it is for you a certain way. So as Hegel would say, the in itself is for itself, right? In other words, the nature or truth of something in and of itself is what it is for you perceiving it, right? The in itself is for itself. That what, in other words, what something is what it is for you at that moment when you're perceiving it, right? So if you didn't have the past karma for certain kinds of objects, they wouldn't exist or appear to you in the way they do right now. So the key here is why this is important and not some philosophy seminar. What diamond cutter is is whether or not you'll ever be able to take all sentient beings to total enlightenment depends on how you label them. If sentient beings didn't exist through your labels, you couldn't take them to enlightenment. No one could get them there either. So the key of the Diamond Cutter Sutra, the magical recipe, the meaning of the story, the moral of the story, the nature of the pure diamond of Diamond Cutter here, what we're talking about, in other words, the metaphor for emptiness, is because you label sentient beings as suffering, okay, they must be helped as sentient beings, okay? If you didn't label this way, you'd have no reason to help them. If you label them as enlightened beings in paradise, you would have no need to save them, okay? So in other words, your past deeds and karma force you to see them as suffering beings rather than Buddhas being fully enlightened, okay? So in other words, because I have a deluded mind and see all beings around me as suffering and seeing myself as suffering, that's what samsara is. Samsara is the forced label from the past appearing to your mind right now, contaminating the appearance. In other words, my mind, which is completely blank and things are empty like a diamond or pure like a diamond, completely transparent, but the way they're colored, the food coloring I'm dropping, if I have a crystal glass of water, that's such pure crystal like a diamond and the water's so pure, it could be anything. The dye that I'm putting in the water, the food coloring from the water is making it appear a certain way, red, blue, green, or whatever. So my mind, because of my self-cherishing mind based on my self-grasping, has produced all sorts of suffering from countless past lives, including producing me seeing myself the way I am right now as being part, as samsara, the fact that I'm taking uncontrolled rebirth due to my delusions and negative karmic actions in a body of flesh and blood that will, again, true sufferings, be born, grow for a little while, start to get sick, start to fall apart, and ultimately die. And all sentient beings around us are in the same boat. But that's because of the way I've labeled them, the way things are turning up, or the aspect that's being produced from my past karma is appearing that way. Now, if I plant different kinds of seeds or have different aspects that end up being selected out or produced, I can see myself and all sentient beings as being in a pure land, as enlightened beings. So Diamond Cutter is about generating that bodhicitta, the wish to get enlightened, to see things in their emptiness or blankness, and plant seeds for different kinds of aspects, okay? So ultimate bodhicitta, when we talk about that, conventional bodhicitta we usually say is, of course, it's the unity of method and wisdom, or compassion, wisdom, realizing emptiness. So conventional bodhicitta always talk about is having great compassion, wanting to remove all the suffering of sentient beings. Ultimate bodhicitta, they say, is wisdom, realizing emptiness. So technically, why ultimate bodhicitta is ultimate, it's the secret code, the secret recipe, the magic right here for the direct perception of emptiness. Okay, and emptiness in this case being Mahayana, unified with love, unified with compassion. It's compassion and love that is motivating me to meditate on emptiness in the first place. I want this for myself and all sentient beings too, for us all to have this experience, which is direct perception of emptiness. See things as being having a natureless nature or being blank, and then projecting out on that different seeds or karma that ripens into an aspect of living, being a pure being, a diamond-like being in a diamond-like world. In other words, beautiful, right? And suffering-free. So having that diamond precious perception, okay? So this, when you have that, of course, Geshe just has the thing that this is the real sense of non-duality, is that when I have that direct perception of emptiness, my mind and emptiness, its subject and object, are almost dissolving into one. Of course, they're not. They're nevertheless different. A subject and an object are together in interrelated relationship. They're not the same thing. But emptiness and the mind that's empty perceiving emptiness, it's like water and water, or empty space and empty space going together here. So the key is, for a diamond cutter, is that I should always have this view, like the Nyingma tradition, they talk about having the view of emptiness, and the emptiness of mind, your true Buddha nature, that when I practice as a Mahayana Buddhist, I've got in LamRim, my initial scope is I understand what refuge and karma is. The intermediate scope that will take me out of samsara is the 3 higher trainings leading me to nirvana, which is moral discipline, concentration, having mind of tranquil abiding, and then perceiving emptiness directly. That's what allows me to reach nirvana or escape samsara, find everlasting bliss. But as a Mahayana Buddhist, I do that with bodhicitta. It's the same process, 3 higher trainings, but with bodhicitta. In other words, with the compassion wish to get enlightened, that you lead all sentient beings to the same state or enlightenment. So how I do that, my day-to-day behavior is through the 6 paramitas, right? Is the perfection of giving, perfection of moral discipline, perfection of patience, perfection of joyous effort or joy in my actions, and a perfection of concentration, shamatha and vipassana, and ultimately perfection of wisdom, which is the big one, wisdom realizing emptiness. So those are paramitas or perfections insofar, and what makes them absolutely perfect is if I can have the perfection of wisdom with the other 5 perfections. When I'm giving, what makes it the real paramita of giving is when I'm giving, understanding how things are empty and how they're produced through karma, and that everything is blank, and that everything is just how I label it, and that my intention is to do this for the enlightenment of all sentient beings. When I'm patient, I have the view of emptiness, and that's why I'm patient. Patience means I'm not retaliating against harm with anger. Why would I retaliate against anybody? I'm walking the way of peace because everything's just my mind labeling things. How can I get mad at anybody, at anything? In fact, rather than, Sketch Mango says, throwing a brick into the future by labeling people a bad way, like you're a jerk, F you, quite the opposite. I'm projecting out or manifesting, creating an open-hearted response to things. When people are mean to me, I'm like, hey, love you too, in a nice way, right? I'm patient because of that. Everything I do is joy, right? Joyous effort, that discipline of doing everything with a happy mind, happy because everything's empty. I understand this process, right? Moral discipline. I understand how karma works. Everything's a projection of my mind. So of course, I just want to project the right kinds of seeds, the right kind of aspects. And same thing with concentration. Only concentration will allow me to perceive emptiness directly and reach enlightenment and perfection of wisdom. It's all about diamond cutter. Okay, so this makes it really, if I do these 6 perfections with that view, that's what breaks the circle of suffering, Bliss, and Sarah. Okay, that's enough. So I think I actually ended up having about an hour-long class here. I always end up talking so much. Anyway, wonderful. Thank you very much for watching, for coming, and we'll see you next time. So we'll just take a moment, again, dedicating this for the awakening of all sentient beings, blessings of all holy beings. Through the karma, power of a pure spirit intention, dharma wishes be fulfilled, and all seeming means reach. So it's our take-home little homework for next time. I really always try and remember this little diamond Buddha at our heart, representing diamond cutter, or the diamond quality of the mind. In other words, the emptiness nature of all things, most of all the emptiness of the mind. Okay, peace, power, and love, and see you next time.